The world's most powerful military just asked a war-torn nation for help. And that nation said yes, not out of charity, out of strategy. If you follow geopolitics, what Ukraine has quietly built in the Middle East will change how you see this entire war. Stay with me, because this story doesn't end where you think it does. Right now, while Ukrainian soldiers die on frontline trenches every single day, thousands of miles away in the scorching deserts of Saudi Arabia, over 10,000 Ukrainian-made sensors are buried in the sand, listening, not for Russian drones, for Iranian ones. And the question nobody in Western media is asking is this: why would a nation fighting for its own survival spend resources protecting someone else's? The answer will reframe everything you thought you knew about who is actually winning this war. Before we get to the Gulf, you need to understand one thing. Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia is not just a military installation. It is the beating heart of American air power across the entire Middle East. Boeing E-3 Sentry early warning aircraft operate from here. F-35 fighters worth hundreds of millions of dollars are stationed here. 13 aerial refueling tankers that extend the combat reach of every American aircraft in the region are parked on its runways. If Prince Sultan goes dark, American air superiority across the Middle East goes partially blind overnight. And the threat that keeps American commanders awake at night is not a ballistic missile. It is a slow, cheap, $20,000 Iranian Shahed drone flying so low that a $4 million Patriot interceptor cannot efficiently lock onto it. That is the gap, and filling it required something the United States military budget of nearly $1 trillion had somehow failed to produce. It required Ukraine. Follow this channel. We track these developments daily, so you never miss a shift in the board. Here is what makes this extraordinary. Iran and Russia are not separate problems. They share the same weapons philosophy. Iran's Shahed drones are built on Russian concepts, refined through Russian cooperation, and tested on Ukrainian cities before they ever appeared in the Gulf, which means that when Ukraine spent 4 years developing acoustic detection systems to defeat Shahed attacks on Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhzhia, it was simultaneously, without knowing it, developing the exact solution that Saudi Arabia desperately needed. The technology that emerged is called the Sky Fortress Initiative, and it is unlike anything conventional defense procurement had produced. Forget radar, these sensors listen. Microphone-based acoustic detection arrays, originally adapted from repurposed mobile phone components, buried in sand dunes, mounted on base perimeters, concealed inside abandoned structures across Saudi Arabia. More than 10,000 of them now form a continuous listening network across the kingdom's most critical installations. Each sensor feeds real-time data to an AI processing center that can distinguish a Shahed 136 engine signature from desert wind noise, from a generator hum, from a passing vehicle in less than 1/10 of a second. When the threat is confirmed, the system does not fire a $4 million Patriot missile. It launches an interceptor drone, cheap, fast, AI-guided, defeating a cheap weapon with a cheaper, smarter one. And right now, American soldiers at Prince Sultan Air Base are being trained on this system by Ukrainian instructors who learned it not in a simulation, under fire, against the real thing. Let that land for a moment. The world's largest military is being taught drone defense by a nation that the world's largest military is still helping keep alive. But the air threat is only half the picture. Now look at the water, because this is where the story gets even more consequential, and where most analysts have completely missed the depth of what Ukraine is doing. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 20% of the world's entire oil supply passes through that corridor every single day. Iran does not need to sink 100 ships to control it. It needs to create the believable threat of sinking one. A single successful attack on a supertanker in the strait sends crude prices spiking globally within hours. Even without firing a weapon, if Iran floods those shipping lanes with sea mines and drives insurance premiums beyond the value of any cargo, the global supply chain reroutes itself, and the economic disruption is identical to a blockade. That passive, invisible threat is Iran's most strategically powerful tool, and it has one critical vulnerability. You need highly specialized mine-hunting vessels crewed by personnel with real operational experience to defeat it. Ukraine just sent 4 of them to Hormuz, with a 5th arriving from the Netherlands. These are not repurposed patrol boats. The Cherkasy and Chernihiv are British-built Sandown-class mine hunters with hull materials engineered to carry near-zero magnetic signatures, preventing them from triggering the very mines they are hunting. The Mariupol and Melitopol are Belgian and Dutch-built Alkmaar-class vessels equipped with remotely operated underwater vehicles that can map, approach, and neutralize a mine without a single Ukrainian sailor entering the water. These operations take hours. Comparable conventional methods would take weeks, and the crews operating these ships are not following a textbook. They are the single most mine-experienced naval force currently active on Earth. Russia seeded the Black Sea with thousands of mines during this war. Ukraine's navy cleared them in real conditions with real consequences for failure. No NATO navy operating in the Strait of Hormuz today brings that institutional knowledge to the table. Ukraine arrives not as a partner, it arrives as the authority. Now here is the question nobody is asking yet. What does Ukraine actually get from all of this? And this is where the strategic genius of what Kiev has constructed becomes visible. Ukraine entered this war as a dependent nation, dependent on Western ammunition, dependent on financial transfers, dependent on political coalitions that could fracture at any election cycle. That dependency is not gone, but something fundamental has shifted beneath it. The 10-year defense agreements Ukraine has signed with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE are not arms sales. They are security partnerships that include joint production facilities, AI integrated defense system development, electronic warfare software sharing, and direct cash transfers to Kiev. A nation that was rationing artillery shells in its darkest months is now invoicing the world's wealthiest sovereign wealth funds for security services rendered. In exchange, Ukraine receives Gulf oil supply guarantees, advanced missile technology that feeds directly back into its own defense production, and energy security commitments that protect Ukrainian heating through winters Russia has systematically tried to make unbearable. This is not charity in either direction. It is a transaction between equals. Over 200 Ukrainian drone operators and military specialists are currently deployed across Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait, with the network extending to Jordan. They are teaching drone swarm tactics, acoustic countermeasures, naval mine doctrine, and electronic warfare integration to Gulf militaries. Skills that no Western defense contractor can teach because no Western defense contractor developed them in combat. And they are doing it on Ukraine's timeline, which is the detail that sealed these agreements. Gulf military planners, used to dealing with American defense procurement timelines measured in years of congressional review, sat across from Ukrainian representatives and heard something they had almost never heard from a defense partner. We can have this operational tomorrow morning. That urgency is not just a sales pitch. It is the only mode Ukraine knows how to operate in, and it has become one of the country's most powerful strategic assets. The naval dimension extends further still with the Mora V5 unmanned surface vessel. This is the system that drove the Russian Black Sea Fleet from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk. That disabled a Russian submarine. That demonstrated to the world that a smaller naval force equipped with the right unmanned systems can achieve strategic objectives against a conventionally superior opponent. In the Strait of Hormuz, Mora drones now patrol around supertanker convoys at 50 miles per hour, fast enough to intercept Iranian Revolutionary Guard speedboats before they reach engagement range. And here is the capability that makes it genuinely transformative. The Mora can launch aerial interceptor drones from its own deck while underway. One unmanned vessel providing simultaneous defense against surface threats from Iranian fast boats and aerial threats from Iranian Shaheds. Wolfpack formations of multiple Moaras surrounding a single protected tanker, each covering a different threat sector, sharing targeting data across a network system that Iran's swarm tactics cannot overwhelm, because the defense is itself a swarm. Iran built its entire Hormuz strategy around gaps, speed gaps, coverage gaps, reaction time gaps. Ukraine spent 4 years closing exactly those gaps in the Black Sea against exactly those tactics. The answer already existed. It just needed to be moved 2,000 miles south. And now look at Russia, because this is the dimension that makes this entire story geopolitically complete, and it is the part that Moscow least wants discussed. For years, Russia offered Middle Eastern states a compelling proposition. Russian military systems, the S-400 most prominently, provided defense capability without the political conditions, congressional approvals, and technology transfer restrictions that accompanied American arms sales. Gulf states, wanting capability without American oversight, found Russia a willing and efficient supplier. That market is collapsing. Ukraine, the country Russia invaded specifically to prevent from becoming a competitor, is now competing directly against Russia for Gulf defense contracts. Every Ukrainian acoustic sensor deployed at Prince Sultan Air Base is a Russian system that was not selected. Every Ukrainian minehunter operating in Hormuz is a demonstration of capability that Russia's own Navy cannot currently offer, because Russia's Navy is simultaneously in operational retreat in the Black Sea from the same Ukrainian systems now being marketed to Gulf monarchies as their solution. Ukraine is not just surviving the war, it is using the war as a product demonstration that no competitor can replicate. Russia's Black Sea fleet is the involuntary proof of concept, and every government watching has drawn the same conclusion. Combat proven matters more than specification sheets. Real-world operational data matters more than controlled test results. A drone interceptor system that has defeated thousands of actual Shahed attacks in Ukrainian airspace carries a different weight than one that performed flawlessly in a range environment. A mine-clearing doctrine built through 4 years of operational experience against live Russian mines in contested waters carries authority that no simulation can produce. Ukraine has 4 years of the most intensive modern warfare on record as its portfolio. The acoustic sensors were developed because Shaheds were killing Ukrainians. The mine hunters were refined because Russian mines were sinking Ukrainian vessels. The Mora drones were built because Ukraine needed to defeat a navy that vastly outgunned it. Every capability now being deployed in the Gulf was born from necessity on Ukrainian soil. That necessity produced something no defense budget and no peacetime procurement process had been able to generate. It produced the precise answer to Iran's strategy. This is what a fundamental shift in global power actually looks like. Not an announcement, not a treaty signing. A country fighting for its survival, quietly deploying solutions to the world's most critical security problems, getting paid generously for it, and in the process, permanently repositioning itself in the global order. Ukraine entered this war asking the world for help. It is leaving this chapter of the war with the world's richest nations asking Ukraine for help. The Strait of Hormuz will remain open, not because Iran chose to stand down, because Ukraine made Iran's strategy irrelevant. And Russia, watching from the sidelines as the country it tried to erase signs decade-long defense deals with the Gulf states it was selling weapons to, is confronting a reality it never modeled. The country it designated for subjugation has become its most consequential strategic competitor. If any part of that changes in the next 24 hours, we will cover it. That is what we do here daily. Drop your take in the comments. Do you think Ukraine can sustain this global security role while still fighting the war at home? We read every response. If this kind of deep, no-noise geopolitical analysis is what you have been looking for, joining this channel takes one click, and it means you will never have to wonder whether you missed something important.